For next week.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to That Which Binds Us. George has been complaining for the last 5 minutes about recording this episode. George, can you give us a little bit of a glimpse into what you're thinking right now?
I'm just like sentimental about the things I've always had, and that I'm entering a new stage of my life where I'm not gonna have that anymore.
For like 3 weeks.
I don't know, man. It could be 2 months before my eyebrow grows back to where it needs to be.
So in case you haven't caught on, George is the loser of our bet. You know what's funny is you lost this bet that nobody even watched the episode for. So you don't even have to follow through because nobody listened to the episode. Nobody's going to hold you to it.
Yeah, but we've talked about it so much now. And I totally would have made you do it if you lost.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
yeah.
Totally fair.
Also, I think you just have a better eyebrow slit vibe than I do. Like, I think you should be embracing it. I think you're going to look pretty good with it.
Yeah, no, totally. Totally, man. Thanks for that.
So, this is That Which Binds Us, and this is the season finale of season 1. We had a really good time recording the first, I think technically been 11 episodes. This is 12. But one was the special episode, the NBA episode, so that doesn't come up in the episode numbers. And I think today we'd like to just talk a little bit about our experience recording 11 episodes just from scratch. We didn't really have anything planned going in. We just knew we wanted to talk and chat a little bit. George, I'm interested in what has been your experience of recording this podcast?
A huge learning experience personally. I remember early on when I was just talking to you about starting a podcast. And yeah, it was something everyone always talks about starting a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking about it, and yeah, if you wouldn't have pushed me and encouraged me to do it, I probably wouldn't have done it. And even like the first episode we recorded, the God Shit episode, the vibe was that it was going to be my podcast and you were going to help me like produce it. But it was just so clear after the first episode, I was like, we got to do this together.
Yeah, that's fun. That's not really something we ever explained in the episodes either. This might be the first time talking about it in a podcast, is that we had, the first episode was just technically George's episode. And then, like you said, we just clicked really well, and we knew we would. Like, I think that's why you wanted it to be us, because we just, I don't know, we always talk about this stuff anyways. We talk about God shit, we talk about video games, basketball, so yeah, it was kind of it was proof of the chemistry that we have when we talk about stuff. So
totally. Yeah, what was your experience like early on when we were recording?
It was just fun. It was a lot of fun. I get a little self-conscious, and it kind of made me like look that in the face, look at like, okay, am I talking too much? How do I sound? Like my laugh, I've started realizing I don't like my laugh very much, and I laugh a lot, and I've had to just like eat it, I've had to just be like, that's my laugh, that's the way that I laugh, and I don't like it, I don't think anyone else cares, and if they do, what am I gonna do? That's the way I laugh. So it's stuff like that have been really good for me to like, especially when I edit every episode. So I'm just sitting and listening to it over and over and over, and all I can do is hyperfixate on the things that I feel like I don't do right. But it's been really good. It's kind of given me a view of myself, like a glance at myself, to say like, look at you, like you're doing it, you're loving it, it's fun. What you have to say is important, and what other people say about that is irrelevant to just you saying it. And I don't think we talk much about the self-expression episode, the Men in the Mirror, but that one for me was one of my favorites. Just the content that we talked about, and being willing to stand up and put your shit out there and say your thing out loud, and not be worried about what other people have to say about that. Mm-hmm. But that's, I think, when I think about this podcast, I think most about that episode and what I learned from it. And that is, I think, my impression of season 1 is what I learned from that episode.
I totally feel the same way. I remember like early on before we had even recorded episode 1, I was like test running what a podcast would sound like for myself.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of people can relate to this experience where you hear your own voice in a recording and you hate how it sounds.
Yeah.
Because it's not the way it sounded your entire life. And that was really, really bothering me, like hearing my own voice. So I remember being just in my kitchen alone, and I was recording takes on just like my phone and then listening to it over. And every time I would record like a minute and then start playing the audio, I had to like turn it off. I could not stand it.
It was really uncomfortable for you.
It was so uncomfortable. And so I would normally pause it, like once I was talking. When I would be recording, I'd only go like 20 seconds of talking and be like, no, turn this off. And then finally I was like, I'm just going to not stop it from recording when I start talking. I'm just going to let it go. So I got like 30 seconds in and super self-conscious, just like a wave of self-consciousness. And I was like, but you can't stop recording.
Yeah.
So then I just like paused and like looked at the video and looked as like the seconds are going up, and I'm like, this is like so bad. I can't re-listen to this. Like, but I was like, I can't stop recording. And I just like that amount of like self-awareness was like so much in that moment. And I was just like, I started crying, and I was just like watching it. Like, why can't I just keep talking? Like, this is so hard. And then I just like took a few deep breaths, started talking. I was like, what's something I know I can just talk about? And I was like, all right, BoJack Horseman. I know I can talk about that show.
Yeah.
So I just started talking about some of the characters. I'm like, all right, I like this character because of this, this, and this. I got like a couple minutes in, and then by minute like 2 or 3, I was like, all right, that's enough. And then I did re-listen to it, and just like re-listening to it was...
was it painful to listen back?
Yeah, it was painful to listen back, but kind of similar to your experience when you were talking about improv and how you were up there and... yeah, basically had a panic attack. And then your teacher was like, yeah, but you didn't die, did you?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, like letting all of those feelings bubble up and get to their like climax, and then realizing like, oh, the world didn't stop turning. You're okay. It's kind of one of those moments. So after that experience, I felt a lot more comfortable, like listening to my own voice and hearing myself laugh. It helped me a lot.
So what is your experience now listening to this pod? Because I show you every episode before we release it. What's your experience listening to it on that level? Or is there still the same kind of like gearing up listening? Or do you even listen? You just like tell me you listen and tell me it's good when you actually don't listen.
I do listen, and I enjoy it. But yeah, I have to gear myself up for it. Because every little sound that I make... like that that I just made, bad. Remove it. Edit it out. That was shit.
And now you're going to be thinking about saying for the next 5 minutes.
So yeah.
Totally. I feel the exact same way. Just like listening to, there's something so existential about hearing your own voice objectively and not from the first person in your own head, but like just perceiving yourself the way other people perceive you is a painful window into the person that other people see you to be. I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. Just like for a long time, probably my whole life, I was very intentional about manicuring this perception of myself that other people would see. And yeah, then when you listen to a podcast where you kind of just turn it off for a minute and you're just like talking, we're just chatting and I'm saying goofy things. I think a lot of that came in the episode with Ryan about vulnerability, where we were just being, we were in the moment, we were riffing, we were making cum joke, we were just joking back and forth.
In our element.
And listening back, I felt really self-conscious listening to that and being like, that's what I look like when I'm not paying attention to what I look like. If that makes sense?
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes, like even now, I'm being a little bit performative. I'm aware that there's a camera. I'm aware that we're being recorded. So I'm manufacturing this this mode of myself a little bit. But when I'm just raw, and that's what like listening to my own voice, or like when I make music, listening to my own music, there's a sort of like, that's, I don't know if I like that. It makes you be faced with who you are, and then you have to say, okay, I like that. That's, or whether or not I like that, that's who I am, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, totally. And that's what's been such a confidence builder, like self-learning experience, because we have received positive feedback.
Yeah.
Even though we've expressed ourselves to that level of vulnerability, and are expressing ourselves, and that's what's like receiving feedback has been so encouraging, just like beyond what I was expecting.
Yeah. I mean, it's there was a part in the middle of record, like episode 5 or 6 or so. I have access to all of our stats of every episode, and I realized that was probably not good for me, because I was reading the stats every day, like updating, like how did it do? How were yesterday's views? How was this episode's views? I've since kind of like trailed off because it's about the same every time, and there's really nothing new to look at. But yeah,
so shout out to those consistent listeners.
Oh yeah, yeah. Do you know which one is our most listened to episode yet, or so far?
It was our first episode, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like 100, almost 150 listens. Which,
what the fuck?
I think we're close to 700 total listens.
Name 150 people.
Okay, give me a second. I know I can think of at least one. Yeah, I can't. That's like going into episode 1. I had said like I expect maybe 12 people to listen.
Right.
That was, for some reason, 12 was the number. I was like, yeah, we'll get 12 listens, and I don't know. That's another level of self-consciousness. That's like, if it's a small, intimate group, I'm like, oh yeah, this is like fine and fun. I don't care what 12 people think of me, but
right.
150 people listening to God shit, that's terrifying. Totally. I'm standing on stage at that point, and I don't like standing on stage.
Yeah, there's a lot of those people I don't think I've met or know very well, or not in my consistent circle that I have right now, who I can be like, hey, I'm doing a podcast. It's been really fun. I'm pretty nervous. You know, I'm just seeing how it goes. Like, if you want to check it out, check it out. But some people that are listening saw a link online and are listening because they like maybe know our family or for whatever reason. And I don't get to like lay out a cushion for like if they don't like it. They're just going to listen to it, have their own opinion, and I get no say in that opinion.
Yeah. I think it's so great. I've been very pleased. What you said, you've like felt like you've grown a lot, and you talked about that experience before we started this, where you were recording in your kitchen. What do you think you've learned that you've been able to, or have you learned anything that you've been able to use in your real life?
I think learning that what I have to say is important because it's important to me. So a lot of times I wasn't self-confident enough to, in conversation, like tell a story that might be kind of funny or kind of risky. Might not get a laugh, or people might not be entertained, and I might lose them. To just like confidently like, no, I'm talking, like I'm gonna own this moment. So yeah, just like finishing my sentences all the way out, and confidently telling stories. So just becoming more aware and more brave in those situations. I think that's an area of growth I've experienced the most, and just how I now talk to people.
That's awesome.
I'm a lot less of just like a passive listener. I'm a little more engaged I'm involved in the situation. I'm talking
as a contributor to
conversations.
That's the word.
Yeah.
I think we both kind of had our own episode to practice that a little bit. Like, I think the masculinity episode, I think for maybe 15 minutes uncut, I just talked about myself. And then the dog episode about Ruby, you had the chance to just like talk uncut. And I was like, I'm just so proud of both of those episodes. I'm really like, we didn't have guests. We just went in, we had a thing to talk about, and then we said our thing. And like you said, it just gave you the chance to like finish your sentence, to say all the way through, take as many like pauses and ums or whatever, but like You just were there in that moment and said what you had to say, and I genuinely believe it was one of our more profound episodes that we've had. So, and then the masculinity episode. I'm glad I like talking about myself. So it was fun.
No, that was such a good episode. Especially just knowing that like the stories we have are really interesting and fun to talk about. I don't know if there's something about me or us just like being the younger siblings in our family that like maybe it was hard to get our stories in at family dinner. I don't know, but just like being confident enough to like tell our story and
to like take up space in a room and say like, I'm allowed to be here and tell this story and expect you to listen to me. That's allowed. I'm not a bad person for that, or I'm not, selfish for wanting that.
Right. Yeah. Like your story about Queer Eye during the masculinity episode was so profound and like relatable to I think a lot of people our age, especially guys. That I was like so glad you just had the time and space to really flesh that out. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, I'm glad I had it too. I really appreciate kind of you giving me the spotlight for that, because that was a fun episode.
So for this next part, I wanted to just take a moment to thank everyone who's listened. This was a part of the podcast when we were early on talking about doing a podcast that I had no idea that there would be listeners to thank.
Yeah.
So thank you all for getting this far to the end of our season 1. Just the amount of feedback that we've received that has been positive and insightful has been just like so humbling. People like relate to what we're saying. People, dare I say, learned something from our podcast.
Which actually blows me. Like, what the fuck? Why?
All of my things that I've said are regurgitated like video essays from YouTube videos I watch.
Same. Yeah.
And like sometimes I'll just be like, I watched this one video. And so you're just getting my like gist of the story from a more educated, well-said person.
It's just people like listening to you. I think they like hearing you regurgitate something because you have a fun and cool perspective.
Mama bird it back to them in a way. Digest it all for them.
And then spit it into their mouth like the little baby birds they are.
Listen, my baby birds. So I just really, I at least wanted to take a moment to do that and just think. Like, you all know who you are, who have just, like, messaged us directly.
I mean, genuinely, probably 30 different people have texted me or messaged me on Instagram or something. Like, I don't think I can name everybody, but if you have, just know that, number one, if you've reached out to me personally or our Instagram, I've shared that with George, and we're both crazy thankful. Like you had said, the idea of even having listeners to thank is a funny concept, because I kind of thought we'll do 3 or 4 episodes, nobody will listen, and then we'll just fade off into the nothingness because nobody was listening anyways. But now it's like, it feels like we have to record a thank you and talk about all that we've learned, because there have been we average 60 listeners per episode, and
like Jack and I do have a big family. We do have a big family.
That is about 90% of that family.
All of our family.
Yeah, that is true. I would say genuinely like 10% of that is our family.
Which is fair. But that's a lot of people. 60 people is a lot of people.
It is. I mean, we're obviously very gracious of that. And
and a few people have told me like one of my friends was telling me he was getting on a flight to go with his family. It's like Arizona or something. And it was a really hot plane, and it was very stressful. He was like in the middle of a 3-seat airplane row, and he was just cramped. It was really hot and sweaty, and he was just like getting really stressed, like getting really anxious. And our new episode had just dropped, and so he started listening to it, and it's reminded him of like being with us and hanging out, and it was able to just kind of calm down the situation. because he just felt like, oh, these are voices that I recognize, people that I care about, and it made him feel way more comfortable in this highly stressful, claustrophobic situation. I was like, what the fuck? Like,
Why?
are we doing something?
That's amazing.
So yeah.
Yeah,
I just the positive feedback, I can't talk about it enough. It's been incredible.
Well, I think a lot of what makes this listenable is our forthrightness with things that most people in our communities are a little worried to talk about, whether it be like God or masculinity or purity culture. Like, I think I just don't have a whole lot of shame anymore about the way I feel about those things, which has been fun. It's been really fun to just like say out loud my discomfort with my experience and this certain, like, there are a lot of people who grew up in that same experience with me who message me and they're like, I've never heard anybody who came from this space talk about it like this. And it makes me kind of, you're like, are we doing something? Like, it's like, yeah, I'm so glad that we did this. I think also just for me, like, I'm making it sound like other people got all this, like, I've gotten a lot from it because I wasn't really saying this stuff out loud, at least to big groups of people until now. Totally. And yeah, it validates my own experience to say, yeah, it felt that way. It felt that way to grow up this way in this school, in this environment. And now I'm upset about that, or now I feel at least some type of way about it. Mm-hmm. But even just saying that out loud not only gives me the space to be like, yeah, that was true, but it gives other people who had that same experience to think, that was true, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the beauty of self-expression. I think that's the beauty of art, which it's a little bit weird to call this art because I think it's just us talking. But I think I could talk forever about art and like the beauty of expressing yourself in a way that other people, or in any way, because we're all humans. Like, expressing yourself is what binds us together. Like, expressing yourself and saying your experience out loud, by nature of you being a human, someone else has had that experience. And by nature of you saying that out loud, someone else now feels the freedom to talk about their experience or to validate their experience and say, oh, I'm not crazy. We kind of have a tendency to gaslight ourselves out of experiencing the truth of our, like, history. Because, like, oh, it wasn't that bad, or, like, can I really say, like, it was really fine, and we'll gaslight ourselves out of the truth, which is, no, it fucking sucked, and that's allowed to be true. And then when you hear more and more people saying, yeah, I had that same experience, and it fucking sucked, let's talk about it. That's just how I think you build community and build, I don't know, human nature. I think that's just, like, I think it's beautiful, and I could talk about it forever.
Totally. What would the world be without art? Be a lot less colorful.
You heard it here first. We're the first people to ever say it.
That's the stuff we can promise on this podcast.
Okay, so you may be wondering, and if you're listening to this episode, you can hop over to YouTube, watch this entire episode on YouTube. We are filming this whole thing, and we are filming this, you might hear the sounds, in my backyard. For one reason and one reason only, is we owe you something. We owe you, our listeners, some sort of punishment. And that punishment goes to George. George, do you want to explain why you're being punished in front of 1 million people watching?
Do you have about an hour for me to just expunge on it?
You want to just riff, just to extend it as long as possible?
Honestly, we should probably reschedule for next week. I just don't think the sun's
the sun is kind of like lighting. A little hot right now.
Yeah. Okay, fuck it. I have to get my eyebrow slit. We're doing my left eyebrow. Because Jack and I made a bet on the NBA playoffs. We drafted each 10 teams in the playoffs. And then however many wins each team had, the combined score of all the teams we had, whoever had the most wins, the loser had to get an eyebrow slit. And I was really, honestly confident that I would do fine.
I was so nervous. I was like, I don't know if I could do that. I have a job. Like, you have a job too. But for some reason, my job wouldn't want me to have an eyebrow slit. And I was pretty panicky. But then we started drafting. And I was like, I'm killing this, I think.
Yeah.
I think I've got this in the bag.
Yeah, you did have very good draft selections and made it very difficult on me. But it turned out to be really close. Came down to the NBA Finals. If the Heat would have won, I would have won. If the Nuggets, since the Nuggets won,
I think
you
I only
won.
won by like 2 points, which is pretty
Yeah.
crazy. Like it could have been a 30-point like blowout either way, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna do a little slit in this part of my eyebrow, and I'm gonna look sexy and hot, and it's gonna be great.
So stay tuned. I'm gonna go and get this thing up and running.
Is it working?
Yeah, baby.
So you do have experience doing this, right?
I do have a beard, so I've shaved my beard a lot. I have pretty ginger hands, I'd like to say.
You're about to put like a goatee in my eyebrow or something?
Yeah, let's shave a goatee into your eyebrow. All right. So we decided to turn off the mic, and we're just going with the phone camera. So we've got George right here. How do we feel, George?
How do you feel? Have you done this?
Great.
You've never done anything like this before. Are you good?
I'm good. I'm just gonna get it. You can't move.
Well, I didn't.
Oh my God.
I gotta get steady. I gotta brace.
All right, should we get in there?
Talk to me, Jack.
It's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. It's great.
Are you?
Yeah, girl.
Why are you going back in?
No, you look good. I'm just gotta clean it. I've never seen you so anxious before in my life.
It's so out of my hands.
Yeah, bro. All right, give it a look. Go look at them.
Is it
me see what it
noticeable?
looks
Like,
like.
how noticeable is it?
It looks good, bro. You look gorgeous. Wait, now,
sure?
yeah. Let me get you right in there. Look at him. Yeah, baby.
Am I kind of
You're
hot?
kind of sexy. All right, everybody. Because we're not gonna turn on the mics again, this is our final send-off. Thank you for listening, George. Since you're looking so smoking hot, you give him a good goodbye, a good send-off.
Thank you all for listening. I'm a new man now, obviously, so I've learned a lot. But yeah, I just want to say thank you guys. Yeah, it means a lot. This has been a really great experience. So thank you, everyone.
And that has been That Which Binds Us. See you guys.